You are listening to the Inclusion Revolution Radio. I'm your podcast host, Novi Craven. I'm a Special Olympics DC athlete and a Special Olympics International employee. On this podcast, I interview athletes, partners, ambassadors, employees, and supporters of Special Olympics. This podcast is for anyone and everyone who's interested in Special Olympics and the work that we do. New episodes premiere every other Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, anywhere you get your podcasts. You're listening to the 6th episode of Season 4, the Inclusion Revolution Radio Podcast. My name is Novi Craven. I'm your host for today's episode. Today, we will be talking to Nigel Barker, internally renowned photographer, interpreter, and Special Olympics Champion Ambassador. Welcome, Nigel, to the Inclusion Revolution Podcast. We are so excited to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Novi. So great to be here. What an honor, what a pleasure. I have listened to your podcast before. You've had me in, I got to say stitches, but literally laughing because you interviewed my wife and my sister-in-law, the Chin Twins, for their show, The Chin Twins. You had some great questions and I was giggling away. So thanks for that. And I mean, like I said, it's a lot of fun to be here with you too.
In the world of entertainment, Nigel Barker is a trailblazer. In 1996, he opened his New York photography studio, working with some of the most influential brands in the industry. He even served 17 seasons as a photographer and judge on the hit TV show America's Next Top Model, which aired in over 140 countries. He's currently the CEO and founder of Studio MB Inc. We are so honored that Nigel has brought his talent to our movement. He has served as a Special Olympics ambassador for 2 years. Last September, Barker hosted Special Olympics New York in Parsons School of Design students in New York Fashion Week photo shoot to debut their collaborative Be Brave design collection. Nigel currently lives in New York with his wife and we-owned Yogi, Kristen, aka a member of the Chin Twins, and their 2 children, Jack and Jasmine. I can't wait to talk about your support of Special Olympics, but we'd first love to know more about how you got where you are now.
Big question, Novi, and thanks for that lead in. It's always fun to hear and kind of get into your history and your life a little bit. But I've been working in the fashion industry now for almost 30 years. I first got involved with the fashion industry as a young boy, really, at school, when I was given the opportunity to enter into a show called The Clothes Show, which was one of the very first televised model searches, ever, really. And this was in the late 80s. Before you were born, and I didn't win, but it gave me a chance to start modeling, and that sent me on a sort of a voyage of traveling all over Europe, all over the world, and I got to see a lot about the fashion industry. I got to learn a lot about it, and I'd always been interested in it. I never thought of it as a career. In fact, I thought I was going to go to medical school. That was where I was aiming to go. I had studied biology, chemistry, physics, and maths for the past 4 years up until that point. And then finally it was like, actually, I'm going to be a model. So my parents weren't over the moon about that decision, but I had the chance to sort of explore and see a different world that I knew nothing of. That led to me modeling for about 6-7 years. And then in the 90s, I looked at the sort of fashion world, and I'm a big guy. I'm 6'4". I'd always been somewhat athletic. I used to play rugby. I used to row. I used to do a lot of sports. And so, in the 90s, historically in the fashion industry, there was something which we called grunge, which is a whole movement, and it was about looking very skinny and a sort of androgynous kind of look. And I knew that wasn't going to be me. So I didn't want to stop modeling or stop working in the fashion industry. I wanted to sort of keep all the contacts I had got over the past 6-7 years working in the business. And I had always enjoyed photography. So I sort of transitioned over a 2-year period from one side of the camera to the next. And I did that with the luck of having just met the Chin twins, who you've interviewed, and they became my muses very early on. So long story short, that's how I became a photographer in the mid-90s, followed them to the United States, opened a studio in 97, 98 in the meatpacking district. And that's how I kind of moved, from one industry to another and became a photographer.
What is it like to have your own photography studio in New York City?
That was something I thought of doing in large part because back in the day, when you first start going, it was more of an entrepreneurial move, to be honest with you. I had always admired Andy Warhol's factory, the fact that he had a space where he could create at any time. And when you'd learn about Andy Warhol's, what he would do, the people he would invite over, the parties he would have, all the creations he would make in his factory, and because of all the creative energy that was happening there. And I thought, what could I try and do to create an environment and a studio in the mid-90s in New York City in the meatpacking district, where I could, shoot, create, photograph people, invite interesting people over. And also when clients came to see me, they were, would often be, it's extra expense to hire a photo studio. So the fact that I came with one meant that I was a sort of a bit of a bargain too at the time. So that helped as well. That's how I did it and why I did why I first started Studio MB. I actually don't have my same studio space anymore. I kept it for over, I think, 15 years in the meatpacking district before letting it go. But when I first moved to the meatpacking district, it wasn't the cool place it is today. It was very much a meatpacking district. And my studio was above a meatpacker. And as I went in often in the day, I'd have to push aside literally racks of carcasses of meat hanging outside my front door, which was really unattractive. And I don't actually eat meat either anymore. Back then I did, but that's probably why I stopped eating meat, to be honest with you. But I pushed it away and I got up there. Now, of course, it's the Apple store, it's all these cool, trendy stores, and the meatpacking district has changed dramatically despite the name.
What was it like to host the America's Next Top Model?
Well, so strictly speaking, I wasn't the host. I was one of the judges and the photographer. So Tyra holds the title of host, although I have hosted other shows like The Face of Naomi Campbell and my own show, Top Photographer. But it was a lot of fun to work on Top Photographer and The Face and America's Next Top Model. It's a blessing, to be honest. I have enjoyed every moment of it. And on America's Next Top Model, some of the highlights were clearly the photo shoots that I got to do, where we had great budgets and great ideas and extraordinary creative, and the locations that we got to travel to, places like South Africa, places like Rome, London and Madrid and Barcelona and, really Milan. I mean, we went on and on. We went all over the world. We went to China. We went to Australia. There was nowhere we wouldn't go. And we had so much fun doing it. We went to Thailand, on and on and on, every season a different place. So you can only imagine, but that was really fun, taking my family with me as well.
Do you do yoga with your wife Kristen and her sister Kimmy, aka the Chin twins?
Do I do yoga with them? No, I do not, but I photograph them doing yoga very well. I get into yoga positions whilst photographing them because that's the nature of what I do, but not deliberately. Now, I actually like to work out in a gym and I was one of the founders and starters of a gym called the Dog Pound, where there's one in New York and one in LA. And that's my kind of thing is training like that. And I should do more yoga is the answer though, Novi. We should all do more yoga. I would be, more supple and perhaps less sore if I did more of that, but I'm not as good as that.
How did you first get involved with Special Olympics movement?
I first got involved. I take it back to, I actually had done one or two things with Special Olympics many years ago, actually. And I was always very interested, thought the mission was, very important and made a lot of sense. Inclusion is such an important idea in one's life in general. But it was actually a lady called Juliette Gilliam who got me involved, and I had worked with her at USO. and she had come to me with a suggestion that I got involved with a rather exciting sort of venture they were doing with Parsons School of Design, and so that brought in my fashion sense, my design sense, and I always like to get involved with organizations where I can give back and I can be a part of the process, not just lend my name, but actually lend what I do, which is help create content, help tell stories, help create a narrative, and help advocate for an organization by actually being a part of what they do.
Awesome. Can you tell me a bit about how the Be Brave campaign came together?
Yeah, it was so much fun. So the Be Brave campaign was with Parsons School of Design and several Special Olympics athletes, and I helped mentor the groups with their design process. And essentially, these athletes were looking to create new outfits for themselves in their respective fields that they were doing, whether it was weightlifting or so on and so forth, and swimming and everything else. And the designers had to create these new outfits for them. And that's how it started. That's how the concept started. And if you think about it, we call it Be Brave in large part because it often requires courage and bravery to change and to create change in this world. People often sort of stay on those sidelines, and in sport, it takes a lot of bravery to step on the field, to put yourself out there, to train, to often, to not win. It's a lot of times you don't win the game. You're not necessarily number one. So it takes bravery to get back up there and pick yourself up, and so there's a lot of reasons why we called it the Be Brave campaign. But ultimately, it was this great inclusion of the fashion industry, the sports industry, Special Olympics athletes, everyone working together. I mean, I was there to help guide them, and it was a beautiful concept where these young student designers got to create inclusive sportswear for the athletes. And what that really means is that athletes are all built differently, and every sport is different, and there are different textiles, there are different fabrics, there are different ways to cut depending on the sport, but then also to some extent depending on the people. And one of the issues with the fashion industry in general, and it's been accused of this many times over, not just in athletics but in mainstream fashion, is that it designs for a select few and a very specific body type that is not inclusive. It's a sort of 5'9", size 2 to 4 kind of thing, and it's and hence if you look at the street, most people don't look like that. So in sport especially, we all come in different shapes and sizes. Some of us are, depending on our sport, are built differently. We have bigger chests, bigger legs, bigger bodies, tall, short, all different sizes. And so the idea was to create an inclusive range of athletic wear that would suit all people. And so that was what was so brilliant about it. And that took bravery on both the designer and the athlete to give time, to give their thoughts and ideas. And we created the Be Brave campaign. And, I photographed a great collection of goodies that we were able to sell to celebrate the concept. And we've gone on to continue to do more collections with the young designers at Parsons and new athletes at Special Olympics. So it's ongoing, Novi, and it was a really fun thing to do.
Awesome. Can you tell me about the process of reviewing the adaptive wear that was designed?
Right, absolutely, I can. So we did the whole thing. We did the whole review every week or every few weeks on Zoom. So this was during COVID times. It was not easy. Everyone would get on a Zoom and we'd go over, the process, what it would look like, what people had done, how the new styles, the colors that they were using, how they were doing it. The athletes would chime in with what they liked, what they didn't like, what worked for them. We had trainers as well from Special Olympics on board that would say that perhaps this wouldn't work, or we would need this and this and this, these certain criteria criteria for it to be sort of legal, where within the sport as well, because sometimes you're not allowed to do certain things with certain types of sports because it might get trapped in the machinery, or it might not be functional. It might just be too fashionable but not functional. So there was a lot of different elements to it. So it was a real process, and it wasn't something that happened overnight either. I think sometimes when you hear about these sorts of collaborations, someone jumps on board, they do a meeting, and it's like, oh, we did a collaboration. This was not like this. This was months and months and months in the making. And many meetings, and lots of work thrown in, and professors at Parsons giving their ideas and their knowledge, and these great students working very, very hard to do this. And so there was a lot of work behind it, and a lot of process. So and for me, I think many hours of just really just spending time with the athletes and the designers, hearing their thoughts, looking at their presentations, giving feedback, until finally there were actually final garments that were made for the athletes, which was really cool. It's really exciting to see it come to life,
What do you enjoy most about working with Special Olympics athletes?
I when I say what I like most, I like every aspect of it. We called it the Be Brave campaign, and I think that's a large part of what I get out of it. I get an incredible sense of purpose when I work and I meet and I talk to and I spend time with Special Olympics athletes. There are so many different athletes out there who enjoy all types of sport, and there's something about the camaraderie, the teamwork, the getting together, and knowing that only when we do something together can we actually win as a group. And I think that too, when it comes to inclusion, is such an important part of it. It's like being inclusive means doing everything as a group together, including everybody. And that's what's so special. And so when I meet the athletes, I get a sense of purpose. I get a sense of drive. I get a sense of like, wow, this is what's possible. This is what true bravery looks like. And it gives me something to set my own standards to. It's like, look at them, get up there every day, work out hard, train hard, and no matter what, how difficult it is, no matter whether it's a difficult day or a great day, they're there. And that's something that's so special about athletes in general. And but the Special Olympic athletes, their sense of inclusion to bring everyone on board is an even bigger picture that for me is very important.
In a few words, can you answer the question, what does inclusion mean to you?
Inclusion means to me everybody, everything, all the time. And I say that because ultimately, if you don't include everybody, you haven't got the full picture. And only when we have everybody at the table can we actually know that we've actually got it right. And ultimately, all too often, we are exclusive. And and that's the biggest issue. We feel that exclusive is the right way to go too often, and ultimately it's not. And it's been the mission of my life to open up gates, open up doors, and welcome people to the table. And that's what inclusion is all about for me. Everybody, all the time, no matter what.
Thank you, Nigel, for joining the Inclusion Revolution podcast. It was great to hear more about your experience working with the Special Olympics movement. We appreciate all the work that you continue to do for the Inclusion Revolution.
Thank you very much. The pleasure is mine. What an honor to be here with you, Novi. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Inclusion Revolution Radio. Don't forget to subscribe. Tune in again in 2 weeks for a new episode.